Have you ever been so immersed in a task that the world around you simply disappeared? Hours felt like minutes. Your inner critic went silent. Your movements became effortless, and your decisions were lightning fast. Athletes call it the zone. Psychologists call it flow. Neuroscience calls it the most productive state of the human brain. For decades, we believed that peak performance was about trying harder. We thought it required more activity in the brain. But the science reveals the exact opposite. Flow is not about doing more. Flow is about being less. Welcome to the concept of transient hypofrontality. To enter flow, your brain does something radical. It doesn't light up. It shuts down. Specifically, it deactivates the prefrontal cortex. As we've discussed in the protocol, the prefrontal cortex is your CEO. It handles logic, long-term planning, and most importantly, self-monitoring. It is the part of your brain that tells you, you're doing this wrong. What will people think of you? Are you sure you're good enough? In flow, that voice is surgically removed. The inner critic is placed on standby. This is why you feel a sense of selflessness during peak performance. When the prefrontal cortex goes quiet, your brain's processing power is redirected. It moves from the conscious, slow, and expensive executive system to the subconscious, fast, and efficient implicit system. Your brain stops thinking and starts executing. This is where the time distortion happens, because the brain regions responsible for calculating time are located in the prefrontal cortex. When they shut down, the present moment becomes infinite. You are no longer living in the past mistakes or the future anxieties. You are living in the deep now. This is the state where the 1% operate. This is how world-class coders, writers, and entrepreneurs achieve in 2 hours what others do in 2 days. But flow is not a random accident. It is a biological locked door, and you have been given the keys. Most people wait for flow to happen to them. The architect of focus engineers, the entry point. To enter the tunnel, you must first understand the chemistry of the launchpad. It starts with a specific neurochemical cocktail: dopamine, norepinephrine, endorphins. These are the molecules of the deep. Now let's look at the triggers that force your brain into this state. The brain will not enter flow unless it has a reason to. Flow is metabolically expensive. To trigger it, you must satisfy specific biological conditions. The first and most important is the challenge-skill balance. Think of it as the golden rule of flow. If the task is too easy, you become bored. Boredom is the death of focus. If the task is too difficult, you become anxious. Anxiety triggers the cortisol response we discussed in video 8. Cortisol and flow cannot coexist in the same neural space. To find the entry point, the challenge must be slightly above your current skill level. Science suggests the 4% rule. The task should be roughly 4% harder than your maximum capability, just enough to stretch you, but not enough to break you. This creates a state of arousal that signals the brain to release norepinephrine. It tells your system, this is important, stay alert. The second trigger is clear goals. The brain cannot focus if it is constantly asking, what do I do next? Uncertainty is a distraction. In flow, the goal is not a 5-year plan. The goal is the next 30 seconds. The next line of code. The next sentence. The next rep. When the goal is surgical and immediate, the brain stops scanning for alternatives. The third trigger is immediate feedback. The brain needs to know, in real time, if it is succeeding. This is why video games are so addictive. They provide a constant stream of micro-rewards. Every time you get feedback, your brain releases a tiny hit of dopamine. Dopamine acts as a focus glue. It keeps your attention locked onto the task. But there is a fourth trigger that most people ignore: the risk factor. Flow is an evolutionary survival mechanism. It evolved to keep us alive during high-stakes situations. When there is a risk, whether it is physical, social, or creative, the brain heightens its processing. You don't need to jump out of a plane to find flow. You just need to raise the stakes of your work. Give yourself a deadline that feels dangerously close. Publicly commit to a goal. Make the consequences of failure real. When the brain perceives that the cost of distraction is high, it will surrender to the flow. But you cannot stay in flow forever. It is a cycle, and if you don't respect the cycle, you will burn out. Let's look at the flow recovery protocol. Flow is not a light switch. It is a 4-stage biological cycle. Most people fail because they try to jump straight into the peak. Stage 1 is struggle. This is the most uncomfortable phase. Your brain feels cluttered. You are trying to load all the relevant information into your working memory. This is where the agitation from video 10 happens. Most people quit here. They think they don't have it today, but the struggle is the prerequisite for the release. Stage 2 is release. This is when you step away from the problem for a moment. You stop trying so hard. You take a deep breath. You go for a short walk. This allows your brain to transition from the executive network to the default mode network. It's the aha moment. Stage 3 is flow itself. The prefrontal cortex shuts down. The neurochemicals flood your synapses. You are now performing at 500% efficiency. But then comes stage 4, recovery. Flow burns through your brain's neurochemical stores. It drains your dopamine, your serotonin, and your glucose. If you try to stay in flow for 8 hours straight, you will crash. The flow hangover is real. To be a high performer, you must prioritize your recovery as much as your work. This brings us back to the foundation of the protocol: deep sleep video 2, proper nutrition video 3, cortisol management video 8. Without these pillars, you are trying to run a Ferrari on an empty tank. The how-to of flow is a daily discipline. 1. Identify your high-flow task for the day. 2. Apply the 4% rule. Make it challenging. 3. Remove every single distraction. Enter monk mode. 4. Push through the 15-minute struggle phase. Do not blink. 5. Once the work is done, shut down completely. The world belongs to the focused. In an age of infinite distraction, the ability to enter flow on demand is a superpower. It is the difference between being a spectator and being a master. You have the neurobiology, you have the triggers, you have the protocol. Stop looking for motivation. Start engineering your environment. The zone is waiting for you, but it will only open for those who have the discipline to knock. The session is over. The mastery continues. See you in the next one.